We're wrapping up 2025 with our top 10 stock picks of the year. Joining me now are all of our MarketBeat analysts in person, Chris Markoch, Thomas Hughes, and Jeffrey Neal Johnson. We are looking back at the stock picks that we caught early this year. Then we'll dive into the growth stocks that these guys were most excited about in 2025. And you'll hear whether they're still excited about those growth stories for 2026. And finally, we'll get to that third section where we are going to be talking about the stocks they were excited about in 2025 and are even more excited about in the new year. So I can't wait to get through this list. It's always good to look back a little bit and kind of see how well some of the stories we talked about have done throughout the year. So the first area to talk about is just the stock that you caught early this year that has done really, really well. Chris, let's start with you.
So my pick for the stock that I found early this year is Nintendo, and the ticker symbol is NTDOY. You and I talked about this on the channel. It might have even been late last year, but we were talking about this and I said, the Switch is coming out. The stock looked massively undervalued where it was. It popped about 20% right after the Switch 2 was released. The stock is down a little bit right now, but I think that's actually presenting another opportunity. You see revenue growth year over year. You're seeing earnings growth year over year. So I think there's a strong story. One bit of caution is it is an OTC market stock, and that means that it may not be available for every investor in every trading platform. But if it is available for you, this is a stock you're going to want to watch.
The analyst growth projections are really great on this one. Did this stock pop as much as you thought it would in 2025?
You know, it didn't actually. I think some of that is the broader economy. I think people are expecting maybe those Switch 2 sales won't be as much as people expected. But if you look at recent analyst projections, they're saying it's looking very strong.
I very much remember talking about this one, Chris. A good one to look back on. Thomas, what's the stock that you caught early in 2025?
Well, right, the stock that I caught early this year is really a stock that we've been tracking for years. That's Advanced Micro Devices. What happened earlier this year is it took a while for the AI trade to really be reflected in its results. There was a massive price pullback. We spoke about it many times in videos. Not a lot of reason to buy it back then, except for this outlook that is starting to come into fruition. Since it hit bottom, the stock is up significantly. Analysts are definitely leading us higher. The revision trends are very positive. We're looking for 50 to 100% upside in the next year, all driven really by the back half activity. AMD is looking to launch its MI450 products, which put it on par with NVIDIA as far as hyperscalers go and GPUs. So once that launch is made, AMD is going to be equal to NVIDIA as far as AI infrastructure goes. I'm expecting its data center business to grow by triple digits and accelerate for several quarters, possibly leading to triple-digit system-wide growth. End markets are also normalizing, all being driven and supported by the AI trade. So to me, AMD is a good stock for the year, and it's probably going to be a great stock for next year too.
Yeah, this is one you're still bullish on, but I do think it's a great candidate for you caught it early because back in April, we were really getting beat up for you being bullish on AMD because people were losing a lot of money on this stock.
Well, right, because it's that thing, there was this outlook, this vision for what was going to happen, right? And the market's very front-looking, and that's why the stock price really surged in 2024 in the first part of the year. But it takes time sometimes for these things to happen. And for Advanced Micro Devices, that meant leaning hard into its rack scale capability, which it didn't have before. Now it does, right? And that was the real catalyst for the year, that rack scale capability coming online, the MI450 products being developed, having that launch really cemented into the market's mind. We're really expecting it to happen based on demand, supply-demand trends. AMD could sell as many GPUs as it can make, and there will still be demand left unmet.
A really good caught it early stock, Thomas, and I know we're going to keep talking about it. It won't be the last one.
For sure.
Jeffrey, you did just join the channel a few months ago. So the stocks that you're going to talk about today, you've been a writer for MarketBeat.com for years now. And so we're looking back at some of the stocks that you wrote about online that have done really, really well. What was one that you're really excited about that you caught early?
The one that I caught early is actually Thomas's direct competitor, Intel. They, of course, got a new CEO this year. They've been doing a lot of restructuring, and they were punished during that time. The stock dropped quite a bit, and I spent a lot of the time in my writing trying to convey the fact that nothing much has changed with Intel. They have a massive amount of money in the bank. You know, the new CEO was going to push things in a new direction, and the foundry business direction that they have now moved towards is going to be the next big thing for them. I mean, they're going to eventually end up being America's TSMC, you know? And I think that once the market finally caught on to that, the price started rising, and it's continuing to rise. But now I feel like Intel has gone from a defensive position where they were just fighting to maintain market share to an offensive position where recently they bought Samba Nova and are starting to integrate that technology into their technology, and the release of the Gaudi 3 processor and the whole thing's starting to spin towards their foundry vision, and once they get there, that's just going to continue to push the stock price up.
Interesting. So this is one that had some good growth if you got in when you were talking about Intel this year, and you are still bullish on it for the future, it sounds like.
Yeah, I'm still very bullish. They still have a lot of room to go with rolling out the foundry and the 4 nanometer and the 2 nanometer processes that they're doing. They're starting to take on customers finally in the foundry, but they're still, while their core business has been around for a long time, this foundry business is still very fledgling. They still have a lot of room to grow there, which means that the stock price also has a lot of room to grow.
And all 3 good early growth stories that we talked about on the channel and on MarketBeat.com. I'm going to stick to your guys' answers for most of this series, but I wanted to add one bonus stock, and that's one that we talked about early on this year. That's Applied Digital. This is the one that is close to my hometown, so I have a special connection to this stock, but we were talking about this when it was around $5, maybe even below $5. And at one point, I think this was over $36 this year for the high this year. It's come down a little bit since then, but if you got into Applied Digital when we talked about it, probably did pretty well on that stock. I think we had some viewers who said that they've done really well with that one this year. Do you think it's still a good bullish call for 2026?
Oh, for sure. Applied Digital is GPU as a service. Right now, all indications are that GPUs are sold out, capacity is sold out. You can't get it anywhere. So if you got it, you have gold in your pockets, and they've got it. They're expanding their data center footprint. They're using visible long-term forward contracts to support the growth of these businesses. It's all been very de-risked. They're executing well, so I think that next year will be a great year for that company and for the stock price.
All right, well, now I'm excited to move on to the next section of our favorite 2025 stocks, and that is the growth picks that you guys had throughout the year. Thomas, why don't you start this one off? What was your favorite growth stock from 2025?
My favorite growth stock is Amprius Technologies. This company is still very early in its ramp. Their battery technology is such that I see them disrupting batteries globally. Their platform, their silicone anode structure provides a greater energy density, greater energy discharge, greater charging rates, lower weight for the amount of power you get. So it's really applicable to any battery usage. Right now, it's really being used by the government and by defense contractors for drones, which need to have really light, high-powered batteries so they can stay in the air for a long time and carry more bombs or whatever it is they're going to carry. Radar, whatever it is, they're ramping capacity. At the same time, demand for their product is ramping. The revenue is accelerating. We're at a hyper-growth pace. The outlook is swelling. Analyst coverage is swelling. So the company is in an early stage of a really massive revenue ramp. I think that the coming year, the next 6-8 quarters, we're going to see some significant growth and significant outperformance on a quarter-to-quarter basis.
I want to talk about, when did we first start talking about AMPX? I know it made one of your monthly watch lists a while ago.
So this is one of those ones, I think it's been on the radar 2 or 3 years maybe, but it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, the story is awesome, but between now, when we see the story being awesome and when the awesomeness starts being reflected in the results, it takes some time. So it took, a year, 18 months for that to start gaining traction, but it did gain traction this year. The stock price rocketed higher off of its bottom. We pulled back some now, but at the end of the year, I see support is being held at critical levels above prior highs, which just to me is a platform for it to launch higher again in the coming year when we get those next earnings reports, which to me will be catalysts because of the strength of the reports.
So it's a growth stock in 2025, but maybe an even bigger growth stock in 2026.
Let's think about growth stocks. You're growing, it's not just this year. Like if they were only expected to grow this year, the stock would have done nothing, because then the next year would be crap. This company's supposed to grow this year and next year and the year after. The trajectory is positive and the forecasts are rising. So that's just a lot of tailwind and upward market pressure on the stock price.
All right, very good. And AMPX is a name we've talked about plenty of times, so I'm glad it made one of your top 10 favorites of the year. Jeffrey, what is your favorite growth stock of 2025?
My favorite growth stock of 2025 is going to be Vertical. Vertical Aviation. The eVTOL sector has kind of taken 2025 by storm, and I have spent quite a lot of time writing about all 3 players, Joby, Archer, and Vertical. But at the end of the day, when you look at the strategies of all three, vertical has, without a doubt, the strongest strategy fundamentally. I think that stock has so much more room to go in 2026 that it's going to be an incredible year for that sector in general, because in 2025 it was all hype and speculation, but 2026 is the year where all three have committed to the commercialization phase of their business. But when you look at the commercialization phase of the business, vertical strategy is really the only solid, clear, focused strategy, where the other strategies are convoluted. So for me, vertical is the only way to go in that sector.
So interesting. The first time we had you on the YouTube channel was to talk about Joby versus Archer. And I know it's a specialty area you've looked into a lot. When did you start considering vertical as one of the leaders in the field?
Vertical strategy is clear and it's focused. They're going to produce a vertical takeoff and landing craft, and that's what they're going to do. Whereas the other two seem to have kind of lost their focus, and now it's not so much about building the safest vertical takeoff and landing craft and getting it to market the fastest. It's about building this giant ecosystem that could take years to develop. And vertical's really honed in and stayed focused. They just want to produce the thing and put it out to the regional airports and start flying.
All right, interesting that a new name that we've not heard on the channel made our top 10 stocks of the year. So a good one to look at, and it will be so interesting to see what happens with this whole sector in 2026 if that commercialization does actually take off. Thank you, Jeffrey. All right, Chris, excited to hear what your favorite growth stock of 2025 was.
Well, you know I can't do a video like this without talking about Palantir, and that's my stock. It's had a great year. I expect it to continue to have another solid year next year. I think the honeymoon phase is over for Palantir. I don't think investors should be expecting to see a stock like what it did when it went from under $20 to now at one point this year it was over 180. That hyper growth phase initially it's over. It's going to quiet down a little bit, but there's no reason to believe that this stock is going to have, in my opinion, a significant pullback, or there's going to be a significantly less demand for the company's services. Three things you saw this year. Number one is you saw they proved that they could scale profitability, and they've done that. They're growing profits astonishingly year over year. I don't want to start sounding like Dr. Alex Karp, but I can start bouncing up and down if I need to. They've proven that the commercial side of their business can be a true growth driver for the business. Right now, it's closing in on being 50-50 with their government revenue, and the government revenue is still very strong. They just continue month after month, it seems, just to say one contract after another that they're gaining with not just the U.S. military, but with the U.S. government. They've become sort of the operating system of the U.S. government, and I wrote about that recently. And I think the third point is that Palantir's just become a core part of AI infrastructure. When we talk about AI infrastructure, we talk about hardware. Palantir is the software side of that, and they're just becoming essential. They're becoming essential to every client that they have is basically saying the same thing, and that is that Palantir doesn't come to them with a message of, we're going to charge you this and we're going to do this. They say, we're going to come in and we're going to save your company money. And if we don't do that, don't hire us. And all the companies say is, yep, that's exactly what happens. They install Palantir software and they're finding ways to save money. They're finding ways to use AI in a way that goes beyond chatbots. As Dr. Karp said, it goes beyond making AI a toy. And it makes AI something that's truly useful for the businesses and for their processes. I think the hyper growth is over, but there's no reason that I believe that Palantir is not going to be a strong growth story, not only next year, but for several years to come.
Yeah, and what a growth story it was in 2025. Absolutely. I think this was just before the turn of the year for 2025, when we were talking about Palantir as a $20 stock. Will it reach $20?
Right.
And then it almost reached $200 in a one-year time span. So quite a growth story. We did just have somebody on the channel talking about Palantir as the poster child for, is the AI bubble going to happen because of that overvaluation?
Sure.
What are your thoughts on that?
We've talked about this before.
We have.
And what I'll say is this, Bridget. You have to watch what analysts are doing and not what they're saying. Because all year, you and I have talked about this. And if we look back last year at this time, consensus price target for Palantir was under $100 and fairly significantly under $100. And all year, that price target just keeps going up and up and up. And right now, that consensus price target is about $170. And Palantir's price right now is right around $180. So yeah, I will concede the hyper growth stage is probably over, at least for now, but I still don't see any reason to believe that this stock can't go significantly higher in the next 3 to 5 years. And that's why right now, depending on when you bought it, it's going to depend on whether you really want to sell it or not. Because there's a lot of people that bought it when it was under $10, and they're just sitting there saying, yeah, fine, it can, let it drop. I think it's just one of those things that I think a lot of analysts are talking out of both sides of their mouth, and they're kind of talking their book a little bit when it comes to that. But if you look at what they're doing with the price targets, it's clear they're raising their price targets because they know that this stock is going higher.
Well, it certainly qualifies as an excellent growth story for 2025. I'm really excited for the end of our top 10 list for the year, and that is talking about the stocks that you were bullish on in 2025, that you are still very bullish on in 2026. Clearly, several of the names we've already mentioned also qualify as that, but we're going to get into those names in just a second. I first want to share a special report with everyone for the top 10 stocks to look at for 2026. This is a report by Thomas Hughes. It's a really detailed report on MarketBeat.com that you can check out for free. It's his list of the top 10 stocks for the year, looking ahead for potential growth and what stories could be really interesting in the new year. Scan the QR code or click the link in the description to get that full report for free right now on MarketBeat.com and start to really study up on what stocks you are going to be watching in 2026. But let's finish our top 10 stocks of 2025. These are the ones that you're also excited about in the new year. Jeffrey, let's start with you.
I think the stock that I'm most excited to see what the new year is going to bring for it is NewScale, SMR. As companies start finding ways to save money and make more money using AI, you have to believe that the adoption of AI will only continue to increase, which means that the power demand and the draw on the failing U.S. infrastructure, the failing power grid that we have right now, will only continue to rise. So the only thing that you can do at this point is build a giant battery and plug it into the call center or the data center and wait until the grid gets fixed. And I think that NewScale is the only play capable of doing that now. And I think that the foothold that they got in 2025 will carry them forward into 2026 and make them the leader in the small modular reactor space.
I think this is a really interesting story because you talked about NewScale early on before it had that huge run up, and then it had that huge run up, and then it ended the year on a pullback. Where do you think that chart could go in 2026?
I really think that chart is going to be interesting in 2026. I think it's going to continue to go up because pullback in the stock is because of the pullback in the AI sector. And the pullback in the AI sector from my fundamental standpoint is the pullback that's happening as IT leaders say, it's great, it's a chatbot, we can talk to it, who cares? It's not making us money. And so when they push to the it's got to make us money or we don't want it kind of phase, it becomes obvious to see that the AI trade will continue in 2026, and it will only advance in its complexity and its need, its hunger for power, right? And that hunger for power will not come from the grid. And NewScale is the only always-on baseload power provider that can just be wheeled up beside your data center and plugged in.
Well, that is an interesting segue into Thomas. What is your pick for the year?
I'm on board with the SMR pick, but I choose Oklo. They're equally well positioned in the market. I think Oklo has a slight advantage. It was seen very clearly in the analyst trends this year. The analysts are calling it out. Oklo has a more visible pipeline of business. SMR's is improving, but Oklo's is better and it's growing at a faster pace. They're both pretty much on track to be deploying their reactors on a similar timeline. Again, I think Oklo's are going to be commercially viable a little bit sooner. It's really just it's like a one hand or the other kind of thing. But I think in this situation, I just prefer Oklo over SMR. Everything that Jeffrey said was on point as far as AI goes. There's also other kinds of demands for these power centers. The power grid is failing. We need to have more power. Demand for all kinds of sources, not just for AI and data centers, all kinds of industries. These small modular reactors are, you can drive them right up, plug them right in. You just got to get them some water, get them, a little bit to go, plug them in, and they're ready to go. And I think in the coming year, what's going to happen is we're going to see the deal pipeline increase. We'll see more concrete contracts being signed. The company will become closer to building and completing its first reactor, which is at the Idaho National Laboratory. This is important because what they're doing is they're circumventing the standard pathway for certification by going to the Idaho laboratory. And they're going to get this thing up and running. They're going to prove that it works. They're going to start making money like this coming up year, and then they'll be able to start, launching and deploying their contracted reactors in the following year.
Yeah, interesting comparison about the two. Is there room for both to have a really good 2026?
Oh, for sure. I mean, because they're small, so there's not like one is going to fix a problem. We're going to need hundreds of them. If you look at the nuclear infrastructure and the plans that our country and the world has for nuclear infrastructure, we're going to have to start deploying reactors at 12, 15, 20 of them a year just to maintain the number that we have in service now. And if we want to expand that footprint, we're going to have to really accelerate the deployments. So we're going to see SMR, Oklo, and potentially other players come online.
Yeah, last thing I want you to talk about is just referencing the chart too, because Oklo's chart, very similar to SMR with that big pullback at the end of the year.
Totally. So in line with the AI pullback, but also this thing is happening, the market excitement for these stocks was really peaked earlier in the year. There was a huge inrush into the markets that shot them up real high, but companies with no revenue, no earnings right now, higher volatility, AI pullback happens, bigger than the broad market pullback, but still down to these, what I see as critical support levels that are holding, and a launch pad for the next year.
All right, well, it'll be interesting to see which one wins the race in 2026, or if one even takes off yet that year. We'll see. Chris, you are our final top 10 list of our 2025 favorite stocks.
Well, I obviously didn't understand the assignment because I went in a completely different direction than they did. If I was actually going for that trade, I might be looking at some of the uranium miners, but that could take this conversation in a totally different direction that we don't want it to go. I went for a tried and true stock, but it's one that I've loved for many years. It's AbbVie, and it's in the biopharma space. The stock's done very well this year, actually pretty surprising in a beaten down industry. The pharmaceutical industry in general has not had a good year, but AbbVie's been a shining star in that sector, and it's projected to continue to do so in 2026. So a couple things about AbbVie. They've proven now that the patent cliff for Humira is no big deal.
That's 2 years ago. That's all.
Skyrizi, Rinvoq are already making up all of the revenue that they could be losing from Humira. They're proving that. The company has a massive pipeline, and it's drugs in areas like oncology that are just going to be so needed. And AbbVie's just got the bandwidth, they've got the cash, they've got everything to get those drugs into market, which you and I have talked about biotechs a lot on this channel. That's going to be the key. AbbVie, you don't have to worry about that. They're going to be able to get those products across the finish line as long as they meet the trial stages. So this is an undervalued sector. AbbVie is already a leader in the sector. They're expected to continue to lead. And for investors for whom this might appeal to, it's just a great dividend stock. And it's a dividend, I don't think it's a dividend king yet, but it's a dividend aristocrat.
It is, I call it a dividend king because it was spun off from Abbott.
Yeah.
It's a dividend king. Everywhere you go, people call it a dividend king because of its quality. I think it's a great pick for Chris. I love AbbVie as being a dividend stock. When in the biopharma space, it's the one that I own.
Interesting. These are, again, very different. These are very big growth stories, more risk involved. This one seems a little less risky, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you're not buying AbbVie if you're looking for, if you're looking to speculate, that's not what AbbVie is. This isn't a speculative stock at all. But the beauty of it also is you're getting growth too. It's not just you buy the stock and you cash the dividend. That's not what this is about.
It's growth, it's the dividend, they've got share buybacks, they're increasing equity. AbbVie is a buy and hold, it's a must-own buy and hold stock.
Yep.
I love it. And I love that we all got to get together in person. We never get to be in person together. Right. I feel like with this group of guys, we could just sit and talk stocks for a long time, but we must end the conversation at some point. I so appreciate all of you for joining us on this YouTube channel throughout the year. We have a lot more to talk about in 2026, and we'll be there almost every day of the week. So be sure to join us in 2026 as well. I hope that you have enjoyed being with us in 2025. I'd love to hear some of your favorite stocks from 2025 as well. Especially would like to hear if you've had some good gains from some of the stocks that we talked about on this channel too. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks again for joining us and sticking with our channel throughout all of 2025. We hope you'll be with us again in the new year. Thanks again for watching, everyone. As always, happy investing.